Hari ini kami akan membacakan susunan acara webinar KODE 2022. Acara yang pertama, pembukaan. Acara yang kedua, webinar debat. Acara yang ketiga, sesi tanya-jawab. Acara yang keempat, sesi dokumentasi. Dan acara yang terakhir adalah penutup. Acara pertama yaitu pembukaan. Untuk mempersingkat waktu, marilah kita berdoa menurut kepercayaan masing-masing. Berdoa dimulai. Berdoa selesai. Acara selanjutnya yaitu webinar debat. Acara ini akan dipandu oleh moderator kita, yaitu Saudari Emma Nur Inayah. Selanjutnya, acara akan kami serahkan kepada moderator. Kepada Saudari Emma Nur Inayah, dipersilakan.
Oke, baik. Terima kasih kepada MC yang telah mempersilahkan saya untuk melanjutkan sesi acara kita, yaitu webinar pada hari ini ya. Saya ucapkan selamat siang semuanya. Semoga kabarnya baik-baik semua ya. Jadi izinkan saya mengambil alih acara webinar kali ini. Pertama-tama saya ucapkan selamat datang Ka Batara Mulya di acara webinar KODE 2022 hari ini. Beliau juga selaku narasumber kita ya pada hari ini. Nah, sebelum itu izinkan saya membacakan CV beliau. Nah, beliau merupakan debat dan education juga. Beliau pernah menempuh pendidikan di SMAN 1 Makassar pada tahun graduation-nya yaitu pada tahun 2016. Juga beliau sedang meneruskan jenjang pendidikan beliau yaitu di BINUS Online Learning dari 2018 sampai sekarang. Nah, beliau juga memiliki a core experience yaitu CAP Dipo Open 2022 dan CAP ADC Universitas Mataram 2022, CAP Telkom ACES pada tahun 2022, CAP Messenger Open to 2.0 dan CAP Alsa Undip 2021, ada CAP Birfes Binus 2021, ada DCA ACC UGM 2021. Beliau juga memiliki invited judge experience yaitu ada NCDC dan LDBI Provincial Selects pada tahun 2020 dan 2021. Ada NSDC pada tahun 2021, YTTN 6.0 2021, Smash pada tahun 2021, Pra LDBI pada tahun 2021, dan MEDC pada tahun 2022. Beliau juga memiliki coaching experience yaitu di Universitas Telkom NUDC pada tahun 2022 sebagai coach. Ada Universitas Pajajaran KDI 2022 sebagai coach. Yang ketiga ada dari Universitas Hasanuddin NUDC dan KDMI pada tahun 2021. Juga ada dari Universitas Bengkulu KDMI pada tahun 2021 dan Unismuh Makassar NUDC coach pada tahun 2020 sampai 2022. Di sini juga beliau memiliki educating achievement yaitu ada Asian or Australian Parliamentary 3-on-3 yaitu ada Monash Australs pada tahun 2020 Open Semi-Finals Adjudicator, NCDC 2021 Top 5 and Quarter Finals Adjudicator, ada AUDC MNSDC 2021 Semi-Finals Adjudicator, ada ALSA UI pada tahun 2020 dan 2021 Varsity Finals Adjudicator, ada ALSA UI 2021 High Scoring Invited Educator, LDBI Nasional 2020, YTT 6.0 2021 Grand Finals Educator, ada IFED Jakarta 2020 Open Grand Finals Educator, ada JOVET Surabaya 2019 Open and Novice Grand Finals Educator, dan juga ada IFED Semarang pada tahun 2019 dan Novice Grand Finals Educator. Dan juga banyak sekali nih achievement beliau dari British Parliamentary Debating Achievement juga. Nah, itu tadi beberapa achievement atau experience beliau yang sangat luar biasa. Nah, selanjutnya Kalian tentunya sungguh sangat tidak sabar kan mendengar materi kita pada hari ini yang sudah dipersiapkan oleh Ka Batara Mulya. Oke, kepada Ka Batara Mulya, waktu dan tempat saya persilahkan.
Oke, terima kasih. Ini aku izin untuk share screen ya untuk mulai seminarnya. Oke, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. So, as it was announced before, the topic of today's webinar is responses, framing, and weighing, the tools to take down your opponent's case. The reason why I thought of this as the webinar is because as far as making arguments, making ideas, thinking of logic, and creating a positive case, I think one, there has been a lot of seminars already on that. I think any debate seminar you go to in any other competition, for NUDC, for any competition really, there's already a lot of seminars explaining how to make a good argument, how to illustrate, how to make sure you create a good positive case. So for today's webinar, we're going to be talking about how to run a negative case, how you can make sure that you win, not based on your speech, but your opponent's speech. Should help you guys be a better listener, and be a better response, because this is something where a lot of teams, which I judge personally, have problems in. They can make a pretty good positive case. They can explain their own thoughts well, but sometimes they don't beat their opponent's case. Sometimes they don't explain their opponent's case. So what's the goal of this material? So, jadi tujuannya untuk yang webinar hari ini itu, I want you guys to provide content in your speech or ideas in your speech that is reliant on using your opponent's speech. Jadi alasannya webinar ini itu biar kalau kalian debat nanti, kalian itu case build, hasil speech-nya kalian bukan hanya yang dibahas di case build doang. Tapi speech-nya kalian itu bakal padat isinya juga berdasarkan apa yang lawan sudah bilang dan apa argumen yang lawan bawa. One, this is good engagement. Kalau kalian debatnya 3 on 3 yang Asian Parliamentary atau Australs, this is incredibly important. Karena untuk 3 on 3, engagement, respon, dan lain-lain itu sangat dihitung. Kedua, untuk BP yang format 2 lawan 2 lawan 2 lawan 2, ini juga penting. Karena satu, kalau kalian nggak bisa kepikiran argumen positif baru misalnya sebagai closing, kalian kekurangan argumen yang beda dengan openingnya kalian, respon ini salah satu cara untuk membedakan kalian dengan opening. Kalau openingnya kalian 14 menit, 7 menit, 7 menit, isinya hanya ya argumen positif mereka, hal-hal yang mereka ingin jelaskan, itu mungkin kalian susah kalau kalian sebagai closing pengen bawa kasus positif juga banyak-banyak. This is a way to make sure that your speeches and your responses improve, so you don't just rely on yourself, but you are listening to your opponent. So here's the three ways, here's the three part of this webinar. First, I'm going to explain the simplest one. Responses to disprove your opponent. Negate, mitigate, neutralize. Jadi yang pertama nanti ini bahas gimana caranya argumen lawan kalian itu jelaskan biar jurinya secara sepenuhnya langsung nggak percaya dan nggak terima bakal terjadi. This is the simplest one. Istilah lainnya mungkin kalian dengar A- atau ya negation lah. Intinya bagaimana caranya pastiin argumen dari lawan itu secara langsung nggak meyakinkan. Second way you can do your responses is how to get ahead without an actual rebuttal. Jadi kalian nggak harus kasih rebuttal langsung, bilang oh ini nggak terjadi, ini nggak cocok, ini salah. Karena itu kan rebuttal langsung. What you can do here is framing, give context, or give weighing. Nanti dijelaskan what each of these words mean. Intinya bagaimana caranya kalian mendengar lawan, tapi kalian nggak bilang, oh lawannya salah. Tapi bilang ada hal lain yang bikin argumennya ini nggak meyakinkan. The last part is going to be the hardest method. yaitu flipping a case, using your opponent's goal against them. It's gonna sound simple on paper, but this is the most difficult one. But if you can pull this off, this is most likely going to be something that is very, very valuable. Jadi that's the three parts of today's webinar. Okay, so first, let's talk about disproving. What's the logic behind the three types of responses? First, on negation. With negation, atau mungkin istilahnya dalam bahasa Indonesia itu kayak menolak langsung argumen lawan. The goal of this form of response is to say, one, the opponent is wrong in the outcome. Jadi, if your opponent says, oh, if we follow this motion, we will get economic benefit. The first response with negation, you can say, well, no, you will not get economic benefit. Maybe you will also, it's not likely to happen. There are other factors that make it difficult, or the money is just not going to come out that way. This is to say their outcome is wrong. It's not true. You can also say the opponent is wrong in the process. If they say, if we do this motion, we will get the good outcome. Maybe you can admit the outcome is good, tapi the process is wrong. You can say, oh, they want to use, let's say it's a motion talking about an economic policy. They say, oh, if we do this, we will help small business. But in the process, they explain, because small business use method A, method B, method C to get money. If they are wrong in their method or in their process, then that's what you can respond to. That no, it is not correct. So you just negate that premise to begin with. The last one you can say for negation is, you can just say the opponent is wrong in the context. If they say, oh, small businesses right now use this, small businesses have this ability, small businesses have many support, you can say, no, the context is just wrong. That's not likely to be that way. So that's negation. That's the simplest one. Here's the problem. A lot of times, many debaters I see only negate. They only say, ini nggak mungkin terjadi, pertanyakan kenapa ini terjadi, hasilnya salah. That should be only one response, but there's many more. What's the second and third one? Even on the level of disproving aja dulu. Second is neutralize. Ini menetralkan. Ini artinya, kalian bukan menolak kalau argumennya terjadi, atau dampak negatifnya terjadi, atau dampak positif bahkan terjadi. You don't say it doesn't happen. You can say, ya mungkin aja terjadi. Here's how you can still give three responses to it. One, you can explain that the harm happens on your opponent as well. So if they say, oh, the status quo has this problem and we have this new solution, you don't have to say, oh, it doesn't happen in the status quo. You can also say, the problems we have in the status quo will also happen on their side. So never believe your opponent when they say, oh, when we use this process, we get rid of the harm. You can always attack that point juga. Is it true that whatever they propose, whatever the harm they say is bad, will it not happen still on their side? Ini menetralkan to make sure that, oh, this problem, it's not a winning argument. Karena it can happen on your opponent as well. The second one is pretty much the same, but you can get your opponent's benefit. It's pretty much the same thing. Karena the logic is, if government says, oh, if we use this proposal, if we use this motion, we can get benefit A, benefit B. What you can do on your side is explain that you can also get that benefit. So this is to show that, okay, whatever benefit your opponent wants, it's neutral. It still happens on our side juga. So basically, the third one is to conclude that any ways that your government wants to look for something, you can just prove that it is not exclusive. That's how you neutralize. The third one, and this is a pretty important one, is mitigation. Mitigasi, mengecilkan sesuatu intinya. So this is when you think, okay, I already tried to say ini nggak bakal terjadi. Tapi this is just a good one to help you guys in the later part of your argument or in the later part of your comparison. So what you do when you mitigate is you admit that your opponent is right. Ngaku aja. Ya, mungkin ada benefit ekonominya. Mungkin ada masalah yang terjadi di kalian. Mungkin ada sesuatu yang negatif atau positif yang bagus untuk lawan. The first thing you do is to make the benefit smaller. The outcome your opponents want is small anyway. If they say there's a proposal, it gives you economic benefit. You can say, but the economic benefit is small anyway. The profit is small. The amount of money you get is small. The amount of customers you get is small. That's the way to at least say, okay, it happens, but it's only a small amount. This is to engage with your opponent better. The second one is you can, after you mitigate it, make it smaller, on your side, compare it to your side. Explain kalau, okay, on your government side, they can get economic benefit like more customers. But you can explain, but in the status quo, we can also get customers. So there's not a lot of difference there. It's not significant. It's not different. This is a way to make your opponent's argument seem very, very small and limited. This is how you can show that your opponent, even if they're right, in their best case, istilahnya, it's still a small amount. This is going to be very, very relevant later using the other forms of rebuttal, and especially if you're going to compare your cases with your opponent. So that's the logic behind the responses. Let's get to some examples. I'm going to use a pretty simple motion. The motion is simple. Hold on. This house, as a person seeking a long-term relationship, would refuse to use dating apps. I think this one should be pretty simple. Motion, yeah. Like if as a person, you wanted a long-term relationship, you just don't want to use any sort of dating apps. Nah. Let's put the logic into practice. Let's say the motion is that. First, if you guys have any questions on the motions, you can just raise hand or write in chat. Intinya ya, person seeking long-term relationship, most likely seseorang yang sudah ada pengalaman negatifnya dulu dan sekarang mau cari pasangan yang long-term aja, nggak bakal pakai any sort of dating apps at all. Let's say the government's main argument is people on dating apps are shallow. They are looking for a short relationship. There is a lot of beauty standards imposed. You cannot find someone willing to date long-term. Kesimpulannya itu, orang-orang di dating apps itu nggak bakal sesuai dan nggak bakal cocok untuk orang yang cari long-term relationship. Karena orang yang di dating apps mau short relationship aja, atau terlalu berdasarkan fisik, atau kalau ketemu orang, biarpun bisa dating, nggak mau long-term, jadi nggak sesuai. Let's put the negation, neutralize, and mitigate of response. One, the simplest response is to say, there are many people on dating apps who want the long-term relationship. So that's the simplest one. Dulu kan. If government says there are no people wanting long-term, you say there are people wanting long-term. So that's the basic form of rejection dulu. Of course, this is not enough. You still have to illustrate juga. There are many people who on the dating apps who want long-term relationships. You can also explain, oh, there are many people looking for partners there. You can say that there are many people who say they are looking for someone to get married to or at least start a relationship and maybe make it long-term. So that's the first thing you do, negation. So that's to say the main point of the first response is to say the premise of your opponent is gak ada yang mau. On up, you say ada yang mau. Simple one. The second form of response is to government. Outside of dating apps, not many people want a long-term relationship anyway. So the government's logic is not many people on dating apps want long-term. If you want to accept that, you can say, oh, tapi on government side, outside of dating apps, not many people want long-term juga. So you neutralize it. The problem of not many people want long-term is not just exclusive in dating apps anymore. It is also happening in real life. So that's what you can explain. That's the second form of response. You don't reject your opponent. You just say it happens on your side juga. That's a neutralize. The third response on mitigation, even if most people don't want a long-term relationship, you can use features like the filters or your bio or look at their bio or through chatting. You can still find your match. So you're not going to say on up, many people want long-term relationship, but you can say even if most people don't want long-term relationship, you can still find a few people. This is to reduce the harm of gak ketemu orang yang mau long-term relationship. So it's clear that there's three different ways you can disprove your opponent. One, whether the argument is true or not, negation. Two, whether or not the argument is exclusive or not, neutralize. Three, even if your opponent's argument has some truth, it is somewhat correct. It is not drastic as what your opponent says, reducing the harms, mitigating the harms. So that's the simplest form of response dulu. This is good practice to have 2 or 3 of this at least in your speeches. Reject it happens, say it can happen on your opponent and make it clear. And then even if something bad happens on your side, make it smaller so the judge doesn't think, oh, it's a bad thing. Kayak gitu. So yeah. So that's the first form of responses, which is disproving. Second form of responses, which is the non-rebuttal. What's the logic behind this? It's 3, and this is going to be harder. So each form of non-rebuttal will have its own slide later. Now, framing. What is framing? Framing is somewhat similar to neutralize, tapi you don't even have to say it can just happen on your opponent juga and explain a lot. When you want to use framing as a response, think about first, what is exclusive or not in the motion? So you have to first ask whatever your opponent is saying, mereka mau pakai proses ini, mereka mau cari ini, mereka mau pakai cari benefit ini. Is that exclusive or not? If they want to use a certain process, is the outcome, is the benefit, is the experience something that is exclusive, or is it something that can happen on your side juga? This will be clear in the example later. Second, as far as framing, is you have to pay attention. What is part of the wording in the motion? If the wording in the motion is not, there's still a room for you to explain why a process can happen on your side or why a certain context can happen on either side. This will be only clear with a motion example later. And thirdly, what you can do when it comes to framing is push a burden. Explain, what does the opponent have to defend? Because if your opponent only runs, I don't know, a case that is way too good or way too easy, you can push a burden on them and say, no, 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 government cannot defend this scenario. They also have to defend a different scenario. So yeah, that's the third way you can do framing. The second way you can do a non-rebuttal but still beat your opponent is using context. Explain the context and why the context disproves the argument rather than you disproving the argument. You can prove one, for example, this doesn't fulfill the interest of the actor in the motion. So you can, if it's an actor motion, or even if it's a motion that has at least a vulnerable actor or a main actor, even if it's not a as blah, blah, blah motion, it could be like THBT, the feminist movement has to do something, or this house believes that the culture of politics should be one way or another. Even if there is no specific actor already mentioned in the motion, you can still most likely think who is the important actor in the motion. Does it help them or not? Does this fulfill them or not? The second one on context is you don't say the argument or the process is wrong, but you say the resource or the privilege to run that process isn't there. So if government, for example, wants to say, oh, if we give money to these people, they will be able to make a business. And then once they make the business, they can be successful. But you can then say, even if you give the money, that money is not enough, for example, to make a good business. Even if you have money, if you're a minority, if you're a woman, if you're a racial minority, if you're a religious minority, you still get discrimination from society. So it's not enough. You don't have the privilege to be accepted by society and like be respected by society yet. So that's what you can do on context. You don't say the process is wrong. You don't say the outcome is wrong. You say the context is not enough to make that process even happen. The third one is you introduce other actors to the process. If government talks about, oh, they want to explain how an individual person, how a small business can become a success, what you can do is introduce another actor and say, oh, but the success of the small business isn't just based on the money they have or the process they have, but it's also based on the politics or what the policies are in society, based on the customers and what is their current trend, based on the big corporations and what they do when they see competition. Those are the types of things you can do to add context. The last one is weighing, and this is a very unique one that very few people understand. So if you can use this, you can really help you. Weighing is comparing yourself in the round. Give your arguments more reasons why it's better. You don't explain a process, you don't explain the context, you don't explain the framing, but explain a different aspect. Is your argument, for example, more drastic? Is it helping an actor that is more poor, needs more help? Is your argument more likely to happen? For example, does your argument have a lot of mechanism and process that's clear, while your opponent only has many assumptions? Is your argument more contextual? Do you talk about more actors, more scenarios, etc.? Does your argument give more benefit? Comparing the benefit. Let's say your argument actually offers more money than your opponent, or you are offering something that is more important. This is just a few examples. And the last one is maybe why your argument, for example, is more independent, more guaranteed, etc. This is also a different weighing, where the first way you can give your weighing is to explain why your argument has aspects that are better than other arguments. But the second one is why your arguments have a more guaranteed aspect to it, more independent, etc. That's how weighing goes. So that's done with the logic of it. Let's go with the examples. Each one is going to have its own slide on framing, context, and exclusivity. So let's use the same motion. So you guys have this context already. Let's say government makes the argument. People in dating apps are fake. They make a persona. Their bio is lying. They don't show their true self, only a few photos. And government wants to say their alternative is it is better to date someone from your social circle or someone you know offline through work, through school, through friends, etc. Here's how framing can respond to this without taking this down. So the logic of government is dating apps, fake people, offline, real people, or like they're honest. You could disprove that no, people on online dating apps are real. Tapi itu kan kembali ke first form of rebuttal. Here's how you can respond to it without responding to it. Framing on exclusivity. You can say any problems you might face in dating apps can still happen with friends. They can also be fake with you. For example, like you can have friends that are nice in front of your face, but they're mean when they are not talking to you. Dibicarain kalau lagi nggak ngumpul gitu kan. If you think that people are hiding their true self on dating apps, your friends can also be hiding their true self. I don't think I need to explain this. Most likely you guys have that experience juga kan. At some point, some friends are different when they're in front of you, when they're in front of their family, when they're in front of other groups of friends. So you're not responding to them on saying, oh, this argument is wrong. But you say, oh, this argument is not exclusive. The problem of fake is something that happens on their side juga. The second one on framing, for example, is on government, you don't have many options if you use your social circle or people you know offline, because it is limited based on location, based on your own race, based on your level of privilege, based on your hobbies, etc. So what you're attacking is not that dating someone in your social circle is bad. You're not saying it's a bad thing, but what you're saying is that you have less options. So you're not engaging in the quality of the relationship or the fake or real aspect of the relationship, but it's about the level of options you have. This is a completely different argument that you're using, not to rebut your opponent, but this is to start comparing. You can then from here to you can say, yeah, if you use dating apps, you have more options because you can date people from different locations. If you are a different race, you are not likely to hang out in real life, so you can meet them in dating apps. Different level of privilege. If you have different hobbies, in real life you're not going to meet them. If they like sports, you don't like sports, you will not meet in real life. But if you use dating apps, you can meet them. So that's how you can give a non-rebuttal. Like, you don't take down your opponent's argument, but you show that, oh, what the government has to defend is something that is missing something, which is missing the option because it's limited based on those aspects. So that's the first example, which is on framing. Let's rebut the same arguments using context. First context is, let's say a government says it's good to know using date friends from school, work, whatever. You can say that friends are only compatible with you on a friendly level. They are not likely to be dating compatible with you. Jadi, this is a giving context on what friends are. So you're not saying that the it is bad automatically to be close with your friends. You're not saying friends are fake. You're not saying friends are bad. What you're saying is, sure, friends can have a good connection with you. They can be real with you. But even if that's the case, you are not always compatible. Ini karena ya kalau kalian bisa temenan, ya bisa aja cocok conversationnya, kalau ngumpul, whatever. But when it comes to dating, it's a different set of characteristic you're looking for. Different set of personality, different types of interaction, different level of expectation, maybe. So you're not responding saying, oh, friends are bad and friends are not good for you. Because I think that may be too extreme. Because if you're friends, most likely dekat kan. Ada cocok-cocoknya kan. So what you're responding is the context that your friends are good with you because they only want to be friends, but they don't want to date. Either they're not attracted, emotionally not compatible, or whatever. So this is giving context on what friends are, telling the judge, yeah, government cannot automatically say if you're friends, you can easily date, because it's a different thing. Being friends and being dating is different. Jadi you're giving context rather than saying government is wrong. The second rebuttal on context, you can say, if they say people in the dating apps are fake, you don't have to say, you don't just say, oh, people are real. You can admit that, yes, it is difficult. Many people will be fake. What can you do as a response? On op, you can say, you can learn how to find the correct partner in the dating apps via doing things like discussion, education, looking for tips, looking for suggestions from your friends, and using the features, etc. So here, what you do on context is you say, okay, the actor in this motion is just the person looking for a relationship. You can say there are other actors in the world that can help you find this long-term relationship, like other people that use the apps, your friends that use the apps, people who are making like discussions or tips or threads on Twitter, how to find the right one, how to stop finding people who are fake, how to reduce the chances of you finding someone who only wants a shorter relationship, um, by discussing with them, looking for some education or tips like on Twitter. So you introduce another actor to the debate. So it's not just, oh, sebagai individu lakukan ini. Bilang, ada orang-orang lain yang bisa ngebantu to stop the harm that government is looking for. So that's how you can get ahead on context as well. So that's the second one on context. Third one, on weighing. I have to give the explanation, an explanation first. Weighing is not just an argument automatically is bad or not. Weighing is usually what you do after you already finish responding and then you're comparing to your own argument. This is sometimes called bias adjudicating in your own speech. So if let's say the argument is the same from Gov, you can say, if let remember our first rebuttal early on regarding options, options, options. You can say having more options is more important in the debate rather than having few options, since it will always be hard to find the one. What you do is you give weighing. The weighing is that you will have, you want to weigh that the quantity of options is better than the quality of options, because you have a guarantee of getting more options, and that options are important in finding someone who you want to have a long-term relationship with. So this is how you use weighing to explain, yeah, mungkin quality bisa dicapai on government side. In the best case of government, quality is better if you use your social circle, offline friends, etc. But you have to, but at that point, you can use weighing to say, yeah, betul aja terjadi yang government says, tapi it's not important that you need to have more options, because even if you have quality options, it's still going to be difficult for you to find the one within your circle of friends. Second way you can do weighing with rebuttal. Let's say the scenario is rejection. People on dating apps are fake, so they can reject you. You can also give a rebuttal saying, yeah, your friends can also reject you, kan? What's the weighing for this argument? Because rejection at this point can happen on both sides. If you want to use dating apps, you can get rejection. If you want your friends, you can get rejection. So it looks the same at this point. How do you break this deadlock? How do you break this tie? Give weighing. Explain the process. Explain an additional aspect of your argument versus your opponent's argument. You can explain that rejection from friends is harder than rejection from dating apps, because rejection from friends is something that feels worse. It is a bigger harm. It makes you feel more disappointed and angrier. Here, you then give the weighing on how drastic the scenario on Gov versus the drastic the scenario on off. You can say, in our worst case, people do get rejected from dating apps, or or you have breakups from dating apps. Kan? Sure, it happens, but it's not that bad. Compared to government, you are rejected by your friends, by your school friends, by your work friends. It feels worse because you thought you were a close friend, but now you're being rejected. So you are more disappointed because maybe you have more expectation. So by doing that, you are giving the weighing that what happens on government is drastically worse. On both sides, bad things happen, but the bad thing is worse on your opponent. That's how you use weighing. So that's how you can get away with not having a direct rebuttal to your argument's logic or their process, but you introduce other things to make the main argument weaker. Gitu. Kaya you're not rejecting that you're not saying, oh no, rejection cannot happen on our side. It can happen, but it's worse when it happens on your opponent's side. Kayak gitu. So that's the second form of responses that you can use. Next is flip case. How do you actually use this type of response? There's two common ones that I personally use, and I think it's the simplest way to explain. The first one is co-opting. Co-opting kurang lebih itu kalian mau ngambil juga apapun yang lawannya kalian tawarkan. What are you doing by co-opting? You're trying to prove one of three things. One, the goal of your opponent is possible on your side. Kalau lawannya kalian mau sesuatu, jangan hanya bilang, oh goalnya jelek. Bilang aja, oke, goalnya menarik, tapi bisa kita yang lakukan itu. Second one is the process is better on your team's case. So let's say you have the same goal, sama-sama mau hal yang sama. You can then explain, sure, but our process is easier, more accessible, more guarantee, work with the context more, etc. Thirdly, what they want on government is something you can get anyway on opposition, similar to the first one. Intinya, whatever they want as an outcome, as a benefit, mau itu accessibility, easy, quality, you can have that on your side juga. That's what co-opting is. That one's the simpler version of flip case. This is to say, okay, it's similar to the not exclusive, but the other way is co-opting. Second one is prerequisite, prasyarat. The basic logic of this one is to say, okay, your opponent has this goal. This is the starting point. This is the goal. They have to go through this whole process to reach the goal, kan? What you want to say adalah, okay, they have this goal, but you say your argument is in the middle. For government starting point and their goal to happen, put your argument in the middle of the timeline. Explain that your argument is the prerequisite to reach their goal. This is a way to say, okay, government's 0 and government's 100 is correct. Sure, they can say starting from 0 to 100 sudah ada kayak goalnya mereka. But put your argument in the middle of that. Explain that your argument is necessary to reach the goal that government wants. This means you're gonna have to push yourself to think about the whole process and if you can insert yourself in there or not. The other way you can do it is try to give context. So you at least one of 3 things happen in your argument. In this response, I mean. 1, explain that the goal of your opponent needs your process. So they can have the point 0, point 100, but to reach that point, you're the halfway point. You are the process that's needed to do that. So maybe they can say, yeah, we are minority. We want equal rights. That makes sense, right? You need to explain that, okay, to get that equal rights, you need your process first. So that's the idea of prerequisites. The second one you can explain, let's say the process of your government is already correct. You can say, oh, the process on their side needs the context or actor that you're explaining. So they can have a point A, point B, point C. Point A is the start, B is the process, C is the goal. They can say from point A to point B, this is our process. You can explain that in that process, they need your argument to work. The last one is a different way to change the timeline. You can say, okay, they have goal A, they have starting point A, ending point B. You want to be putting it in the middle and say, to reach that outcome, you need your outcome to happen first, because it's an incremental process, gradual process, step-by-step process, etc. That's how you can explain it. For this one, I'm going to give 2 examples. One won't be in the slide because it just recently came up. So let's still use the same logic first. Let's say the government's main argument as the actor is, we want to find a long-term relationship and they want to characterize so we can be secure about it, find someone who we can care about for a long time and will appreciate us. This is the reasoning to explain kalau this is why they want long-term relationship, kan? So this part is explaining the goal. They haven't explained the process yet. This is not explaining the process of using dating apps versus using real life friends. So this is most likely going to come in the early parts of their speech about their goal. How do you flip case this? One on co-opting. Finding the one is something that still happens on opposition, even if the process is longer. So if government wants someone who you can be secure with, care about, and appreciate you, you can co-opt that and say that can happen on opposition. You can go through different partners, you can discuss, you can search for a longer time in dating apps, but you can still find it on your side. To say that, oh, goalnya lawan, bisa di kita juga. So that's what co-opting is. If you want that case, if you want that benefit, you can have that on our side juga. But the second one that is more important, the prerequisite idea, you have to introduce the logic. You are more likely to find the one if you search through more people using the apps. This is to flip the entire case of government, to say that, okay, government is single, government is single, they want a long-term good relationship. You can say the process of finding that good relationship is you have to search through many people first. You cannot just jump from A to B langsung dapat. You can break down their logic and say, ya bagus starting pointnya udah benar, bagus goalnya, we want that, and the judge is likely to believe that. Tapi say, but the process is missing, the process is bad, so you introduce the process. This is a flip case to say that your process gives more opportunity for the same goal. So you have the same goal of finding this long-term relationship. Opposition will not go crazy and say, no, we want short-term. Well, you most likely you're going to agree, just different process, but you introduce the logic that the process of finding the one is one that is a very long-term process and needs more opportunity, and you cannot just do it very easily. That's how you can flip case to say, yeah, government is right in characterizing what they want, but they are missing the process to do it. If they introduce another process, you rebut it in a different way. But if they have a goal that you also want to seal, this is how you're going to do it. This is what a flip case looks like. The second one on prerequisites. So that's the that's the example. The other example, I'm just going to drop it in chat because hold on, because it is using a slightly different context. Hold on. Let's say we use this motion. There. That's the other example of a motion. It should be in the Zoom chat. Let's say the motion is, this House believes that environmental movements should denounce green energy that harms the environment as opposed to supporting all green energy. Intinya di GOV, mereka mau environmental movement itu ngekritik kalau ada yang sok-sok green energy tapi tetap nggak membantu lingkungan. Contohnya kayak yang paling relevan mungkin di Indonesia itu perpindahan dari menggunakan plastik ke tas yang menggunakan bahan lain. That's still harming the environment because there is no clear recycling there, right? So the logic of government would be, government wants to denounce green solution or environmental solution that is not good. So they can push them to be better. They want to criticize so they can be better. On opposition, you can say the process to make innovation and to make the technology, to have better green technology, is something that requires you to support them first, because supporting the company is the prerequisite and is the process necessary so they can continue to develop and grow, so they can finally create the innovation that government wants. So you say the goal of government is good, to improve the company and make them make better solution. But you flip the case saying, but the process is not denouncing them. Because if you denounce them, you say they are bad, you criticize them, you make them angry, the companies will say, malas. Because kita sudah berusaha, nggak diapresiasi. So they stop. So you agree with their goal, but say their process is bad. Then you introduce a different process. That innovation is step by step, it's gradual, incremental, it is making small innovation, small innovation, small innovation, and it's a long-term process. So you say your process, which is supporting the green energy, which is supporting the company, appreciating them, promoting them, giving them more customers, that is the prerequisite for your government goal. So you don't just take down the government process, you take their goal as well. This is to make sure that if the judge believes in the goal that the government has, on opposition, you don't say, I don't want this goal. No, you say the goal is good, but you just have a better process for it. So that's the example that I think I can give on how to use this flip case. the key thing to understand is prerequisite. You have, whenever your opponent makes an argument, think of a timeline. What is the status quo? What is their goal? Can you insert yourself between the status quo and their goal? If you can do that, that means you are creating a flip case where you say, benar yang government mau, prosesnya salah. Gitu. So yeah, uh, that's what you can do. Here's the example of using that prerequisite idea on this motion, on the relationship motion. To find the one, you need to learn about what is available in the world and how people are. Here you can explain the process of finding the one. The prerequisite for that is more experience of knowing people through the apps. So you introduce the process of belajar-belajar, kenal-kenal orang, lihat-lihat orang itu sudah seperti apa di dating apps-nya. That's how you can truly have the process of finding the one. The second one example is to make sure that the relationship you find on both sides is long-term. You need to learn how to compromise and be a good partner. You're introducing a different process then. You are saying that, sure, maybe in the best case of government, you find a relationship. But you say, but finding a relationship is not the only part of the process. You also have to be a good partner in the relationship. So here you can say the prerequisite for keeping your partner long-term is knowledge on how to date, how to be a partner, how to be in a relationship. So you again, starting point of no partner, goal of long-term partner, you insert yourself in the middle of the process and say, yeah, to make sure it's long-term, you say you have to learn first. Learn through the dating apps. Kayak gitu. So those are the ways you can use the flip cases. So here's the conclusions, I think, for today's material. The goal of a response is one of two things. You either, one, take down your opponent's argument. So the judge will not be convinced that it is true, it is even right or not. Two, is exclusive or not, because even if something can be true, it's not exclusive, it doesn't matter. Or three, is it relevant or not based on the context? Second goal of responses, which is a different one, even if the argument of your opponent isn't taken down, let's say it's still standing, let's say the judge can still buy the argument. What you want to get from responses is to show why your case is still better in comparison. If your previous goal in the first goal of responses is to make your arguments from 100% to 0%, even if you can make the argument from 100% to 50%, that is still a good thing. Because if you can cut down the benefit of your opponent by half, when you compare it to your side, which will have more than 50% benefit, you can still win the debate and use arguments to your advantage. So you want to show why your case is better in comparison. Even if your opponent made a good case, make it become only a mediocre case compared to your case, which is going to be a good case. Second is the usage of responses. What I want you guys to get from this isn't just use every single rebuttal all the time, but understand that there's a variety of options you could use. You don't have to use all of them at the same time. If you cannot think of ways to disprove your argument, maybe give framing, maybe give context. Maybe if you cannot say this does not happen, you can at least say, but it doesn't happen as good as government wants to promise. Government promises huge benefit. In reality, only small benefit. The second way you can use this response is, this is the most important thing, especially in BP, terutama nanti kayaknya misalnya di KODE, kan? If another speaker or another team already use one type of response, you can use the different type of response. If as closing government, your opening government already says, oh, opponent is wrong. This will not happen, this will not happen, this will not happen. On closing government, you can say, we want to be more charitable. We want to engage in opposition. Even if their argument is correct, here's why it's not important. Here's why it's not relevant. Here's the framing. Here's why the context proves that it is useless, etc. So just like creating a different argument, using a different form of rebuttal is something that is very, very valuable in BP debating, especially. this can give you guys, if you guys have ever heard the feedback of derivative, terlalu mirip openingnya, similar, whatever, using these different types of responses will help. If you can use, for example, that flip case as a closing, that's how you can beat your opening without responding to your opening. Because if you can take into account your opponent's best argument, steal that benefit, then you can show, okay, your team is better because you can take the argument from your opponent. So that's the conclusions that I hope you guys can get from this webinar. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for coming for today. We're gonna now open the Q&A session. Oper kembali ke moderatornya.
Oke, thank you Kak Batara Mulya. Jadi, nah itu tadi adalah materi yang sangat luar biasa kan buat kita semua nanti, buat di KODE 2022 nanti. Nah, selanjutnya kita akan memasuki Q&A session. Jadi untuk teman-teman semua yang ingin bertanya, boleh nih raise hand dan memperkenalkan diri dulu. Pastinya nih banyak banget pertanyaan yang ingin diajukan kepada Kak Batara Mulya. Jadi, kalau ada yang ingin bertanya, silakan raise hand dan perkenalkan diri.
I'm dropping the link in the chat, yeah, if you guys want to go through it again. If you missed anything or if there's, you just want to go through it. Okay, I'm just going to be answering the questions as they come up, yeah. If you don't unmute, it's fine, I'll just answer one. So first from Esther, Ka Batara, I'd like to ask, is it strategic and recommended to put intertwined rebuttal? Sorry, couldn't unmute. Okay. So one, I would highly suggest that yes, you put intertwined rebuttal in your main case. So to explain a little bit, what this means is if your argument is directly clashing with your opponent, if your opponent says we will get economic benefit, but your argument is saying no, government will have economic problem, or we will get more economic benefit, that at that point is clashing, right? It's probably talking about the same thing. If that's the case, I would say it is more recommended you use the intertwined rebuttal. Karena satu, itu lebih efisien untuk waktu. Kalau kalian rebuttal di awal, perkenalkan argumen, tapi kayak argumennya mirip-mirip aja, atau kayak rebuttalnya kalian itu sama prosesnya dengan argumen positifnya kalian, mending gabung aja. The way you use it with your wording, and this is important, because remember, debating is still humans talking to humans. You cannot just say intertwine in the rebuttal, and then you let the judge think, rebuttalnya di bagian mana? You have to still think of the judge as a human that could misunderstand you if you don't explicitly say it. For me especially, this is one of the most important parts of my manner that I try to do. You have to explain, okay, this is my argument, ini prosesnya, ini konsepnya. First layer, blah, 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 blah. Second layer, quote your opponent. Say, when government says this process, we say this is wrong and this is not likely to happen. Why? Kembali to your own case. What's more likely to happen is blah, 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 blah. Stuff you most likely already thought of in case build, or you already discussed with your partner. And even if the government did not bring the argument, you still bring this as your own positive case. So it is very strategic and recommended to put intertwined rebuttal. But at the same time, one, be aware and be explicit which part of your positive case and the intertwined rebuttal is the same. Make it explicit when you're doing it. But second, even if you cannot make an intertwined rebuttal, it is fine. If you want to have a dedicated time for responses, like your first 2-3 minutes are responses, and then you get back to your own positive case, totally fine. That works as well. It's just that for efficiency, for time management, and to make it easy for you as well to not speak too much and repeat yourself, it is recommended to put intertwined rebuttal. I hope that's clear. If it's not clear, you can give another question, follow-up question in the chat. I'm still going to be reading them. Okay, next question from Bisma. Is there any tips on responding well-mattered case from your opponent? One, I would say if it's a problem on matter, that's a different thing. Because if you're completely outmattered by your opponent, most likely even your positive case will lose, kan? Kayak biar nggak pakai rebuttal, comparing positive case ke positive case, kalau matternya kalian udah kalah, most likely it's gonna be a difficult position. So my tips are, one, even if your opponent has matter, still listen for the logic of what their argument is. If let's say the motion, yeah, for example, tadi yang environmentalist motion kan, yang environmentalist itu. Let's say the matter that they give is, oh, in the status quo, there are many green company or green technology that is actually harming the environment and it is actually bad for the environment. They can have all of this matter, like ada perusahaan ini, perusahaan itu, di Indonesia ada contoh ini, contoh itu. Sure, they will have matter, but you can say, what's the logic behind it? You can say, okay, that is true that happens, for example. But you can say, but look for the logic. The logic is, oh, these are corporations that have limited money, for example. You can then say, okay, these corporations are, if you denounce them and reject them, they will feel underappreciated and they will stop improving on government. So just because your opponent has more matter, that doesn't mean you guys automatically lose. Like, I'll be honest with you guys, I never read any sort of matter. I don't have a matter bank. My news comes from Twitter probably, but I just rely on logic, because if you focus on matter, there's a bad problem of people relying on matter and one example or one case study as their main argument, which is just not good. So my tips is, even if your opponent has a well-mattered case, listen to the logic of their matter, because they still have to mention it. If there is no logic, ya judge-nya nggak bakal beli juga. But try to hear the logic and that's what you respond to. You can use all of the structures that I gave you from there. Hope that helps. Yeah, I think those are the two questions so far. Yeah, I'm gonna give you guys a few more minutes to give questions if there's anything else. Okay, question from Esther. Sometimes I have a problem in thinking during response during opposition speed. How is it possible to think opposition possible case and make rebuttal during case building time? Okay. A few solutions. The first easiest one is just think, oh, if I am the opponent, what will I do? Kaya, okay, whatever your ability is to make case building arguments on your side for your own team, yeah, use that own thought pas dilawan juga. So when the motion launches, sure, think of your argument. But then at some point, okay, stop and think, okay, if I was misalnya opposition in this round, what will I bring? Okay, I already bring about quality in relationship. Opposition might bring, oh, there will be more people. There will be more people I can date. How do we respond to this? How do we prepare for this? Kayak gitu. So I think what you have to do is put yourself in the position of your opponent and try to case build at least like 1 minute lah. If you're in a team, at least one of you can do that. Okay, one person focus on the positive case, maybe the first speaker, but the second speaker, while the first speaker is writing, maybe like a few minutes in the middle, you think, okay, if I was opponent, mau bawa apa ya? So that's how you can start thinking of your opponent's case and make rebuttals against them, prepare against that. I would say this is honestly very, very, very common. For me, at least, for the teams that I debate in, at least halfway through the case building, pasti sudah sempat masuk ke case lawan kira-kira apa. If not, even like the last 5 minutes of your case building bisa, okay, 10 menit pertama kita udah bahas case-nya maunya kayak gimana, the basic logic, mulai catat-catat. The last 5 minutes mikir kayak, okay, lawan mau bawa apa ya, lawan mau bawa apa ya. This is the most important if you're opening government or you're opening opposition, because you have to prepare for your closing teams. If you are a closing team, you can still prepare in the case building, So you can be prepared to rebut your OO if you're Chege or your Oge if you're Cheo. Gitu. So yeah, whatever ability, whatever process you have to case build positive arguments, use that same process just on the opposing team. By doing that, you can get prepared. Gitu. Yeah, I hope that helps because yeah, that's how I tend to make rebuttals. In many cases, I end up preparing the rebuttal and then using it in the round because it is exactly like because me and my opponent think of the same argument for their side. Gitu. So yeah, it's a little bit making a little bit of a prediction, making a bit of a guess, a bit of a gamble to prepare a rebuttal that lawan mungkin gak bawa, but it's still better than not preparing it. So yeah, that's how you can do it. Hope that helps. Okay, next question from Sofina. Is that okay if we do too much rebuttal when our argument looks the same, especially when we are closing? Yes, that is 100% fine. A good judge will value a rebuttal the same as a positive argument. If let's say, okay, Oge is bringing argument A, argument B. Everything you prepared for in case building, they already mentioned argument A, argument B. If you are going to be doing rebuttal the whole time, like maybe 5 minutes, 6 minutes rebuttal to your opening opposition, and then your whip responding for 5 minutes, 6 minutes to closing opposition, or if you're closing opposition, you spend so much time responding to Oge and Chege. That is fine. Maybe it will have a hard time comparing to your opening team. If your opening gets first in that round, maybe it'll be difficult for you to beat them because the positive case is not new. But if you focus entirely on rebuttal, it is still possible for you to beat the Oge and the Chege and end up getting second place, which is strategic because in BP debating, especially, it's not just about winning or losing. It's about getting as many VP as possible. So if let's say the scenario is your closing opposition, your O brings everything you prepared for, all of the good arguments. On CO, you can just think, okay, but OO didn't really bring that many responses. Let's respond directly to Oge and Chege. If you focus on positive case, you can get fourth because your opening already bring everything, you'll be derivative. But if you focus on entirely a lot of different rebuttals, you can beat Chege, you can beat Oge, you can at least get second. So that's why focusing too much on rebuttal itu nggak apa-apa sebenarnya. Especially if you cannot think of any positive case, nggak apa-apa, padatin aja rebuttalnya gitu. Mungkin bahkan terinspirasi lagi bikin rebuttal, ini bisa jadi argumen positif aja gitu. So yeah, that's what you can do. This is especially important, by the way. If your opening take your argument, but your opening is not good, gak apa-apa. If let's say the scenario is kalian Chege, Oge-nya kalian mirip argumennya, tapi you did feel that the argument was not good, wasn't that good. Your OO and CO are bringing great arguments. Gak apa-apa, rebuttal aja banyak-banyak. You will at least beat Oge, you have the potential of beating CO, and you have the potential of beating OO. If your Oge is bad and you follow their argument, automatic fourth basically. If your Oge is bad, you rebut to OO and Cheo, you can beat your Oge by being more responsive. You could beat Cheo by your responses. You can beat OO by your responses. So you're putting yourself in a different, better place strategically. So spending a lot of time on rebuttals is totally fine. Another question. As the LO in an OO position, prioritize making preemptive rather than responding to Oge. For example, when Oge not really significant in the debate. I would agree, yes. If talking about strategy, like I mentioned before, the other thing about responses is you don't want to spend too much time responding to a team that is very, very minimal. For example, like if you're using the example, if Oge didn't, maybe their airtime in their speech wasn't good. The process was repetitive, many things were assertive. They use many examples, but not much process. They don't have a lot of characterization. Their arguments were not that good lah, intinya. Or you feel like their arguments were not that good, and your leader of opposition can already beat them. Maybe kayak, okay, bawa argumen, LO udah respon, DPM-nya nggak merespon, jadi responnya LO masih jalan. Di LO, there's nothing you can take down from Oge anymore. At that point, it's okay to focus on preemptive. this is why it's also going to be important terima-terima POI. Karena kalau dari first speaker bisa terima POI dari CG, artinya di LO-nya bisa persiapkan, oh CG tadi nge-POI tentang ini, mungkin extension-nya tentang ini deh. So yeah, it's the same logic as before. If you're don't spend time responding to a team that doesn't have a lot of good arguments, spend more time on a preemptive comparison or completing your positive case. Gitu. Yeah, hope that helps. Intinya, being strategic, it's fine to spend little time on OG, do more preemptive as the LO, if you feel like the OG has already been defeated. Gitu. Okay. Do you guys have any other questions? Okay, I'm just getting. Ini aku kasih aja ke moderator untuk timingnya gimana. Kalau masih tunggu pertanyaan, kalau ada pertanyaan lain yang nggak kepikiran di sini, boleh nanti tanya aja. Karena kita masih ada seminggu ke kode. Jadi aku kasih kembali ke moderatornya.
Oke, thank you Ka Batara Mulya. Jadi, is there any question, guys? Sebelum kita nanti nggak ada waktu lagi buat nanya loh gitu. Kalau ada teman-teman ada pertanyaan lagi boleh nih disampaikan dulu. Wah, sepertinya udah terjawab semua ya ini ya. Jadi sepertinya Kak cukup aja pertanyaannya. Boleh ulun izin nutup dulu Kak. Oke. Jadi tadi pemaparan materi dari Ka Batara Mulya yaitu tentang perkenalan debat. Jadi hopeful buat kalian nanti di kode nanti bisa ngerti bagaimana mekanisme debatnya. Saya sebagai Emma Nurinai sebagai moderator di acara webinar kali ini mengucapkan terima kasih dan undur diri. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya serahkan kepada MC.
Baik, terima kasih kepada moderator yang telah memandu acara kita pada siang hari ini, dan juga terima kasih kepada narasumber yang sudah memberikan materi yang sangat luar biasa. Semoga apa yang disampaikan bermanfaat untuk kita semua. Acara selanjutnya yaitu sesi dokumentasi, diberitahukan kepada para peserta yang masih mematikan kameranya agar segera menyalakan kameranya, karena kami akan melakukan sesi dokumentasi. Baik, kami akan mulai menghitung mundur. Untuk yang belum menyalakan kamera, diharapkan untuk segera menyalakan kameranya. Baik, saya hitung. 3, 2, 1. Untuk slide kedua, 3, 2, 1.
Untuk slide kedua tahan sebentar ya, baik. Oke, mungkin bisa dihitung kembali MC.
Untuk slide yang kedua, 3, 2, 1. Baik, hadirin yang berbahagia, tibalah kita di penghujung acara. Sebelum acara ini ditutup, alangkah baiknya kita membaca doa terlebih dahulu. Berdoa menurut kepercayaan masing-masing dimulai. Selesai. Terima kasih kepada seluruh panitia dan peserta yang telah menyukseskan acara ini dari awal hingga akhir.
Saya Herni Viviana Sari
Dan saya Apsarina Fataria,
selaku Master of Ceremony mewakili seluruh panitia, mohon maaf untuk segala kekurangan.
Thank you for all your attention.
Akhir kata,
Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.